The party that should never have happened. In college life, parties are synonymous with fun and an escape from routine. But for Ian, Bryson, and Chris, a night that was supposed to be normal turned into a nightmare they still can't forget. It all started when Ian received an invitation from Callista, a girl he barely knew, to a party off campus. Desperate for some fun, the three friends decided to go, bringing Chris as the designated driver, who, since he didn't drink, took on the role of responsible one. When they arrived, they immediately noticed something was off. The house was enormous and imposing, much larger than the neighboring homes. However, the first thing that stood out was the lighting. All the lights were on. No strobe lights, colored lights, or candles typical of a party. The guests were elegantly dressed, which sharply contrasted with the casual clothes the three friends wore. The strangest part was the music, an ethereal mix of instrumental sounds, almost hypnotic, that seemed more suited to a ritual than a college party. Despite the odd atmosphere, the friends decided to stay. Their curiosity was piqued, and the promise of free drinks was tempting. Soon, they met some girls who seemed very interested in them. Tina, one of the girls talking to Ian, was particularly attractive, but she was the one who revealed the first bizarre detail. While laughing, Ian noticed a thin green mark on her neck. It looked as though it had been drawn with a pen, but it was too uniform and precise to be casual. He didn't say anything at the time, but he started to look around and noticed that other guests had similar marks. Later, while Ian was in the bathroom, he was confronted by a tall, well-dressed man wearing a crisp white shirt and linen pants. The man didn't say anything at first. He simply stared at Ian with a neutral but intense expression. When Ian finally asked what was going on, the man coldly replied, "Who invited you?" Ian mentioned Callista, but the man only smiled in a disturbing way and left without saying another word. The situation worsened when Bryson and Ian realized that they also had marks on their necks. However, theirs were red instead of green. Chris, who was waiting in the car, insisted they needed to leave immediately. On their way out, they noticed the other guests' gazes had become even more intense, almost predatory. When they reached the car, they discovered they had received text messages from the girls they had been talking to, messages that were impossible to have been sent since the girls were nowhere nearby when they left. On the drive back, the group couldn't come up with a rational explanation for what had happened. By the end of the night, they all agreed they had escaped something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. To this day, none of them have ever spoken about the party again, or tried to find out what was really going on in that mysterious house. I'm watching you. Mike was a civil engineering student at Purdue University. His life was organized. He lived alone in a simple apartment far from campus. Despite residing in an area known for being somewhat forgotten in the city, Mike didn't mind. He was far too busy with his studies and believed his quiet routine kept him safe. That all changed when his backpack was stolen inside a classroom. Inside the backpack were his laptop, wallet, and, most concerning, the keys to his apartment. He was upset, but thought the worst that could happen would be the hassle of changing the locks. However, that same night, when he got home, he found something terrifying. A note slipped under his door that read, "I'm watching you." At that moment, he froze. He had no idea who could have sent it. Mike tried to convince himself it was a cruel joke, but the unease wouldn't go away. The following nights only made things worse. More notes appeared, each more disturbing than the last. "I know what you did. You're not safe. and be careful with what's coming. The notes were always inside the apartment or in places that made it clear someone had full access to his personal space. Mike also began noticing things out of place, moved shoes, books off the shelf, and even his bed undone, though he was certain he had made it before leaving. The most disturbing moment happened when Mike found his room completely ransacked. Drawers were pulled open, clothes scattered, as if someone had been searching for something. Desperate, Mike contacted his landlord and asked for the locks to be changed immediately. To his frustration, the landlord claimed it would take days. With no other choice, Mike decided to set a trap. That night, he turned off all the lights and hid in a corner of the living room, waiting for the intruder to return. He didn't have to wait long. At around 2 in the morning, he heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. His breath caught as he watched the door slowly open. A hooded figure stepped inside, holding something that looked like a camera. For a moment, everything was silent. When the figure took another step, Mike screamed and ran toward them. Surprised, the person dropped the camera and fled before Mike could catch them. Still trembling, he picked up the camera that had been left behind. Inside, he found photos of himself, sleeping, eating, studying, all taken inside his apartment. Mike turned everything over to the police, but the case was never solved. The experience marked him deeply. He moved out the following week, but even years later, he can't shake the feeling of being watched. To this day, Mike wonders what else that person knew about him, and what might have happened if he hadn't woken up that night, the project that was never delivered. Lisa was a dedicated student at Temple University, well known for her excellence in multimedia projects. When her group was assigned to present a video project, Lisa threw herself into it, working day and night to finish it. She was meticulous and refused to leave any detail out, even if it meant pulling all-nighters. On the eve of the presentation, Lisa worked alone on her laptop. The file was nearly complete, but she kept reviewing and making small adjustments, determined to ensure everything was perfect. It was nearly midnight when she finally sent the project to the professor and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Exhausted, she immediately went to sleep, unaware of what awaited her the next day. When the professor opened the file in class, all eyes were fixed on the screen, waiting to see the result of weeks of work. However, instead of the project, a strange and disturbing video began to play. The room fell into complete silence. In the video, a figure wearing a mask from the movie Scream appeared. The figure spoke in a mocking tone, with a distorted voice full of threats. It made unsettling statements about Lisa, her classmates, and even the professor. The words were shocking and offensive, as though whoever made the video wanted to humiliate her publicly. Lisa froze in fear. She couldn't comprehend what was happening. When she finally understood, she stood up and ran out of the classroom, crying. The professor paused the video, but the damage was already done. Everyone in the room was in shock. Back at her apartment, Lisa checked her email. She discovered 2 sent confirmations, one for the real project and another for the terrifying video. She contacted the university's IT team, who confirmed that her email had been hacked the night before. Someone had accessed her account and replaced the original file. In the following days, things got worse. Lisa began receiving anonymous messages on Snapchat. At first, they were just empty texts, but they quickly escalated to photos taken of her inside her own apartment. The images were terrifying. They showed Lisa sleeping, watching TV, or sitting at her desk. She was being watched. Desperate, Lisa changed the locks on her apartment and installed security cameras. But the messages kept coming. She couldn't sleep or focus on her studies. Paranoia consumed her life. It was then that Lisa discovered something even more disturbing. Her ex-boyfriend Ben admitted to sharing her personal information on an online forum after their breakup. Although he denied any involvement with the hacking or messages, Lisa believed that impulsive act had opened the door for strangers to access her life. Despite filing a police report and changing all her passwords, Lisa was never able to identify who was behind it all. The messages eventually stopped, but the drama remained. She moved to another state and avoided sharing personal information online as much as possible. Lisa never felt completely safe again. That devastating experience taught her that in the digital world, even the smallest lapse in security can open the door to unimaginable terror.